Welcome to Gorilla Sports Off Field. I am Liv Moods, and in just a moment, joined by Nate Jackson. And this is presented by Accurate America. We're going to dive into all things NFL draft, talk a little bit about Travis and Shedeur. Lots to discuss, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment and get right into it.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing, Nate?
I'm doing pretty good. Although I just got, right before I came in here, I just got into a shouting match with a dude on a scooter over on Broadway.
Why? What happened? What did you do to him?
Number one, I hate people on scooters. Like those scooters, like just go home and just off yourself. I don't want, if you have that app on your phone, just go do it.
No, I sometimes I feel like it's a little different, but with like bikers that are like in the lane for the cars when there's a bike lane right next to it, I'm like, unless you plan on hitting 60 miles per hour, like you got to get out the way.
Bikers have a pretty big ego, but the scooters people are just so unaware of what's going on around them.
That's
this
true.
guy was on the sidewalk. Okay? He's got his headphones on, and then he, without even looking into traffic. Now, granted, I'm in the bus lane on the right, about to go right up a couple blocks. So I had to get over onto the bus lane.
Yeah.
Because in 2 blocks, I was going to go right. But he's on the sidewalk, and without even looking, he just goes down and around and into my lane and right in front of me. Didn't even notice I was there. And then goes back up on the sidewalk, and I honk at him. I'm like, what the? And then he takes off, and we start yelling. And I stopped, and we start yelling at each other. And he's like, you're in the bus lane, man. You can't do that. I'm like, you're on the sidewalk going into the street.
Right.
You got your headphones in. You didn't even look.
Right.
He called me a honky.
Oh.
Yeah, he took it there. And so whatever. I mean, I don't know why he had to bring that into it.
He was choosing violence this morning.
He did. He got
and
very
he didn't
upset.
know that you were going to meet him with the exact same level.
And I didn't go there. I maybe, called him a couple other names that were just like,
that's fine.
Dork or.
He loves a good dork word being thrown around. If you get called a dork by Nate Jackson, you are doing a lot of things wrong in life, I fear.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm just calling it like, so I lived in like Venice Beach area, Santa Monica area when these scooters landed on the scene.
Were you in fact, did you go insane over it?
I did, because one day there was none. And the next morning I'm riding my normal bike, and they're just everywhere on the side, on the sidewalks and stuff. So Bird Scooter just dropped them there in the middle of the night. And then, they took over. Like,
it does feel like an alien invasion a little bit.
It was.
Like how did these all get here?
Dorks.
In the middle of the night, the dorks just dropped them off.
And then they just, their hands are clean with them. They never touch them again. They employ other people to come take them to their houses and charge them. They're disgustingly dirty. If you've ever touched one, I hope you washed your hands. I just, anyway.
So that's part of our rundown is scooters hate.
Rolling toilets. Don't ride them. You'll get hurt, or you'll get syphilis.
Or you'll get screamed at and called a dork.
Right.
So take your pick.
Anyway, that's just happened to me, Liv. I hate to rant about that.
No,
but
that's fantastic.
It was literally 10 minutes ago on my way in here. So, but I'm excited to talk football and see you and the Broncos draft and all that stuff.
Yeah, there is a lot to discuss. The draft is like right around the corner.
A week from today.
And it's crazy because it feels like we've already seen like such great movement by the Broncos in the offseason.
Yeah.
That like, I don't even, obviously the draft matters and we're going to like get into all of that, but I'm feeling pretty good already about where they're at, that I only feel like it can just get better.
Yeah.
Because I don't think a lot of people had a ton of faith in Sean Payton and his decision-making when it came to Bo Nix, and that ended up being a really great thing. So I think what I have to remind myself during this time is, as stubborn as Sean is, he's also he's thinking about 6 steps ahead of everybody else, or trying to anyway.
Yeah.
And I think last year's a great example of it working pretty well for him. Yeah. So I'm excited, but it does feel like we've already kind of had draft stuff. It feels like, because we got like upgraded. We got upgraded roster basically in the off season. So there's a lot to be excited about. But I do want to start with Shedeur and Travis. I saw a comment online where someone said that they believe Shedeur is number 1.
It's crazy. It's lying season, right? Like
It is.
nobody knows what's going on. Either he's going to be a top 3 pick, maybe he's number 1, or he's going to fall out of the first round completely. And the only way he'll get drafted in the first round is if it's done as a favor to Dion. Like there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
A lot of people guessing, trying to mislead other people, throw them off their scent, because they want them to fall to him, whatever it is. I personally, for the sake of his career, I want him to slide. I don't want him to get drafted in that top 3.
Right.
If he goes number 1 overall, that's Tennessee. Crappy organization.
Poo-poo.
Yeah. Number 2, Cleveland. Crappy. Giants.
Poo-poo.
Crappy. The Jets. Crappy. Do you want to have a really awesome draft night? Very exciting, where you get to go at the very top of it and then end up on a really crappy team with probably a bad defense, bad O-line, first-year coach, all that?
Right.
Or do you want to slide, have your ego get bruised, but end up on a playoff team like the Pittsburgh Steelers or somewhere, or like the Rams?
Check out Jaden Daniels, man. And he wasn't that guy on draft night. He wasn't the number 1 overall, coolest guy with the most swag, but he sure showed it in the season when it mattered the most. Guess what? He's about the only, outside of Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, 2 that were not first overall and didn't get all the hype.
Yeah.
Were the quarterbacks we were talking about the most at the end of the season.
Yeah. And both of them landed on teams with good coaches.
Yep.
Even though Dan Quinn is a first-year head coach, he's been a coordinator for a long time and knew what he was doing there. And they focused on the defense. The Broncos had a really good defense. Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl before. So both of those quarterbacks landed on teams that were able to support them and not put too much on them and play to their strengths. Whereas Caleb Williams, all right, go out there and win it for us, buddy. Like, no, it's not going to happen. It's going to demoralize you. You might get a bad reputation. They might start doubting you in the locker room. You might start chasing it. I want Shedeur to land on a team where he doesn't have to chase it. And he also talked about how everywhere he goes, he changes the culture. I don't think if you're a rookie going into a team full of grown-ass men and they're asking you to change your culture, you're in the wrong place.
Right. There's only so much you can do as a rookie.
Right.
You're not given. Here's the deal. Shedeur will not be given likely the same freedom that he was given under his dad.
Not at all.
So his interpretation or his expectation, I should say, of changing the culture that he gets thrown into, any culture. He said this out of his own mouth. I will change whatever culture I'm a part of.
Yep.
You're not going to have that same leeway, wiggle room that you maybe did under your dad. And I'm not saying that Coach Prime gave him just free reign of whatever. I think Coach Prime is running a tight ship, but at the end of the day, that's still his son. That's still his dad. So you're not going to get that same level of freedom to just like go in there and change the culture.
No.
There might be elements of a culture that the team likes that he wants to change, and he's not going to be able to.
Yeah.
So I think that's also part of it, where I'm not saying that he's not accurate in that he could change the culture wherever he went. I just don't think he's going to be able to, given the restrictions that he's going to have that he hasn't had in a long time because his dad has been his coach.
Yeah. And let's be honest, everywhere he's gone, he's been with his dad.
Yeah.
So who's really changing the culture there? Is it Shedeur or is it Coach Prime?
Good question.
Because Coach Prime is the magnanimous, magnetic personality who makes these grand declarations. Shedeur has been able to be the action point for that. He's been able to back up his dad's words.
He's helping facilitate his dad's. I would say Shedeur does a great job of facilitating Coach Prime's culture.
Absolutely, yeah.
So maybe Shedeur sits there and feels like I change whatever culture I'm in, and it's like,
no, there's more to it. It was kind of a package deal there. Both of those guys are going to suffer without the other.
Of course.
Coach Prime is not going to have his son there to understand what he means, understand what he says, and go do what he said he's going to do. So Coach Prime's going to be without his son, who was a really important part of his success.
Yep.
And then Shedeur's going to be alone. And there's 32 GMs and coaches out there asking that question. How's Shedeur going to be without his dad around?
I think it's good for both of them.
Yeah.
I will add that in. I think it's good for both of them to experience life without the other.
Yeah.
Shedeur needs to just go be Shedeur.
Yeah.
Forget the last name. We're all going to know it and understand it and know what that means. But he just needs to be Shedeur, not Coach Prime's sidekick. I do think they were, and naturally you expect them to be a package deal given how long they've played with one another and how great they were together.
Yeah.
But they both need to go kind of just experience life alone.
I know, right? And maybe Shedeur was going to blossom into someone he never knew he was behind that, because
for sure
so much of I imagine, I don't know because I'm not him, but I imagine so much of his life has been trying to keep pace with his dad and the things, the way he does things, the things he says, and the declarations he makes, and fulfill that prophecy for him on the field. And he's done that to an extent. There's an argument could be made that maybe they're retiring his jersey a little too soon.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I saw that. And I don't think there's like, my brain didn't say they don't deserve that. It was just like, why now?
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty certain Christian McCaffrey just went back to Valor Christian High School a couple of weeks ago to retire his jersey. And he's played for 2 different teams in the NFL, and he's been out of that place for quite some time. It does feel like a rushed process.
Definitely.
That I'm not saying they didn't deserve it and they didn't do great things while they were at CU and up in Boulder, but it's rare Christian McCaffrey is one of one when it comes to Valor Christian and what he did in college and then what he has done on the pro level.
Yeah.
And it just happened a week ago.
Yeah.
So
it was a little hasty.
I mean,
there's these Darian Hagan and all these dudes from the 90s teams in CU that won a national championship.
Right.
That were really good on the field. Those guys haven't even had their jerseys retired. Rashawn Salam, who won the Heisman, it took him 23 or 26 years to get his retired.
Do you think it feels a little bit like a slap in the face for those players where it did take a while?
100%.
It did take some time for them
that haven't had them retired.
Right.
At all.
Like, do you think that that's a little, you kind of look at stuff like that and you're like, oh, must be nice.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking online and stuff, there's some former players voicing their opinion on that.
Oh, I haven't seen any of that.
Yeah. So there's some people who aren't really happy about that. You got to pay respect to the past. Sean Payton has done that here with the Broncos. Like, he brings out the greats and he talks about what the greats of the organization and how they paved the path to get to here. But have you ever mentioned any of those guys? Mention any of those dudes from those eras that won a national championship?
Right. Who walked so that they could run? Exactly. You got to give respect and you got to understand. It's like what I talked about a little bit, and I'm going to bring up basketball, but it's like when I talked a little bit about Carmelo Anthony having the same jersey number as Jokic, and how Jokic right now, of course, like there's no question whether or not his jersey will be in the rafters, but you also have to acknowledge the players that were there for the stages of not the fluffy, fun, magical stuff. They still made an impact and still made a difference. So yeah, I would imagine that if you're a former player, especially one that played in Boulder and made an impact there, you probably look at that and you're like, yeah, I'm still waiting for mine.
Yeah. It's the NFL, they make you wait for the Hall of Fame. They make you get in line for the most part. Coaches like Mike Shanahan should be in there already, and he's got to wait. He's got to wait so the coaches before him go. And, you have to wait. There used to be a rule, or there is a rule in the NFL. You have to wait 5 years after your last season before you're even eligible. These guys haven't even, I guess they've left campus by now, but they're not even on NFL teams yet, and you're going to retire it. It's pretty crazy. It seems like it's Coach Prime that pushed that. Shedeur's not going to say, you've got to do this for me. It's going to be the coach.
But again, that does bring up the element of there's going to be a little bit of shell shock that goes on for Shedeur when he gets to whatever team he's playing for and realizes, I don't want to call it princess treatment because that makes it sound like I'm trying to be petty, and I'm not, but there is an element of princess treatment, I think, going on when you've got your dad. And I think Coach Prime went to Boulder and did what he did, and he got a little bit of wiggle room to do what he wanted to do because of the revenue he was driving and then the money that he had and all that. And I actually think we've got Coach Prime talking a little bit about the jersey retirement. I think he just spoke about this like just now. So you guys are seeing it for the first time. Let's check out his thoughts and then we'll react a little bit.
Nice to see you. First of all, congratulations to Shedeur and Travis with the retired jerseys.
Amen.
Retired jerseys can be a sore subject.
Not really. This is the first time I ever seen it sore. I don't know if you know it, but I'm retired, man. I think every jersey Darren and I played in is retired. So I'm pretty familiar with this. So it's never been sore.
But why do you think that? What was your message like? Maybe Buff Nation and Buff alums who are
I don't have a message. I'm praying for my AD. I love him to life, Rick George. Let's get the elephant out the room. I don't want to talk about this too long. I'm gonna just talk briefly and let it go. We're talking about Shedeur. We ain't talking about nobody else. But his last name wasn't Sanders, we wouldn't have this discussion. The only reason we were having this discussion is his last name is Sanders. Okay? That's it. It's been so many things accomplished at this university expeditiously. It's been unbelievable. And I think we should be appreciative. We should be thankful. We have a room full of wonderful people that covers us. And I don't know if you all were in this room 2-3 years ago. Very few. Okay, but it's a new day. We're doing things a little different. I think the training table, I think the food is better. Nobody said nothing about that. It's a whole lot of things that are brighter and they're better because someone stands on business and makes it that way. And he is resilient when it comes to it being that way because everything we do is to improve everything for us. I think it was hot in here one time. I said, let's turn the darn air conditioner on a night game, right? The next time we came in, what happened? I think about those details because it don't just benefit me, it benefits what? All of us. So if all of us are happy, all of us should be happy. I'm not going to be critical of you because I didn't get what I want. I don't get down like that. And the root to all of it is personal. Sometimes we got to get out the way, man, and just be thankful for our people, others. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That's what the Bible told me. If we loved that neighbor truly, we wouldn't have a problem with nobody else.
Okay, hold on. I got to take the mic for a freaking second because
what's going on here?
One of the comments that he made was the only reason people are viewing the jersey retirement as a sore subject is because of the last name.
Yeah.
The only reason the jersey got retired this quickly is because of the last name. That's why people are sore about it.
Yeah.
It's not because, I don't like the Sanders, so I've got a problem with this. No, he wouldn't have otherwise been able to do this and pass other alum and pass former players and pass people that have been waiting in line. Shedeur and Travis just walked to the front of this is Black Friday. I've been waiting in line for 6 hours. It's midnight. And some person just walked to the front of the line because they've got status and they just cut all of us and we have a problem. They're not sore about it because it's Shedeur Sanders. They're sore about it because his jersey otherwise would not have been retired this quickly. So without the name Sanders. So him bringing up the last name and saying that's why people are upset. No, people are upset because we've never seen this timeline before. Yep. And there's people that are still in line waiting for their moment.
Yep.
So I have to address the last name comment because that's crazy.
I saw the same
thinking
thing.
that's like the reason that people are upset is, it's just because we're Sanders. It's like, no, it's because this doesn't happen and it's happening.
I heard the same thing when I heard him say that. And he's like, and he had no, he kind of blew off any message to former players or alum or anything being upset by it. And then he said, basically, like, look around, like, look how good you have it now. You should let me do what I want when it comes to that. Like, we're changing the protocol because I am so great. And what I've done here is so special for all of you. Look at the training tip. Look at the food you're eating now. It's so much more delicious than it was 2 to 3 years ago. There's so much more money for everyone. So I should be able to buck typical protocol and put him at the front of the line if I want because of everything I've done here.
It reeks of entitlement.
A little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know what? I think it's been so difficult when I want to talk about the Buffs because you do absolutely respect what he has done in Boulder. And I've never really cared to watch Boulder until Coach Prime walked in and said, here's what we're going to do. He added a little bit of culture and swag to Boulder. Boulder has needed that for quite some time. Okay. So,
and it's okay to respect it and be happy about that, celebrate that, but also stay true to the roots and the protocol and the traditions and honor that at the same time. You don't have to blow all that up to have this new age program.
Correct. And I'm actually, it's so funny because right now I'm getting word as an alumni of the dance team that I danced at college that under this new coach that they've got, a lot of the traditions are being ignored and disregarded. And I think she kind of walked in there with a bit of a power trip trying to fix things that didn't need to be fixed. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But she wanted everything to be her era. Mm-hmm. She wanted it her way. And it's like these traditions have lived for 2 decades and she's not an alumni of TCU. So it almost feels like she's disrespecting the traditions that have been there long before her and how valuable those are. And, you see a little bit of that with any new coach. They want to change things that they don't think are working just to make them their own or things that they think will make things better. But traditions are traditions for a reason. They're kind of untouchable in some way. There's certain things you just shouldn't mess with. And it's hard. Like I said, it's hard talking about CU because on one hand, I absolutely respect and value Coach Prime, not just for the fact that the player he was, but the coach that he has been for some time and what he's been able to bring to Boulder. But that doesn't exempt him from criticism.
No, not
and
at
I
all.
think some people are scared to do that.
Yes,
And
they are.
I think there's a respectful way that you can say, hey, Coach Prime, I hear what you're saying. You have brought a lot of revenue to this place and a lot of excitement around this program. But there are people in line that have been waiting for their moment, that walked so that your kid could run. I mean, that's where it gets hard, because I think people are just very nervous to critique greatness.
Yeah.
You can be great and one of the best to ever do it and still face criticism. And I think this is a moment where Coach Prime probably just should have said, hey, I acknowledge that there's former players and alumni that are upset. That was never my intention. But to be dismissive of the people that may have an issue with it, that didn't feel like maybe the right way to respond to that question.
I agree.
But
he has a history of kind of pushing back on media narratives he doesn't like.
Yeah.
And then banning people from being credentialed or reporting on the team, which he did for Sean Keeler of the Post last year. Sean Keeler wrote some critical articles of Coach Prime, and Coach Prime called him out and basically said, I'm not answering your questions anymore because I don't like the stories you write about me. That's kind of childish behavior from the guy in charge. And you got to have thick skin when it comes to the opinions of people who cover your team or fans or alumni or guys who left it all out there on the field. Like you said, paved the way for these young guys.
Yep.
But he doesn't seem to really care too much about that. It's going to be his way or the highway. And it creates a sort of bowing down and kissing the ring situation there, where people are afraid to push back a little bit. To me, it feels almost like he's fast tracking this because maybe he doesn't think he's going to be around there very long, and he wants to be there when that happens, or I could be wrong with that. I know he just signed a 5-year deal. I don't know the details of that, or it was a 10-year deal, whatever it was. The contract says he's going to be around a long time, but why would you do that to your son? Like, I don't. That's different from every other protocol that has ever existed around retiring jerseys. Has anyone ever had their jersey retired while they're still at the freaking school? Because he's basically still at the school.
I don't think we've ever seen this. Like I said,
even for
Christian
Travis,
McCaffrey,
Travis deserves it. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, but why right now?
Like, what's the rush?
Because we do it different. Because it's different.
And I have to just listen. I'm all about being unique and different. I'm in the process of planning a wedding.
How's that going?
It's been fun.
Good.
It's been fun, but I do have that in my brain where I'm like, oh, this is a traditional way to do it. Maybe let's not do that then. Like, of course, everybody wants to be different and unique and whatever.
Yeah.
But constantly trying to be the one that does everything differently.
Yeah.
It can give pick me.
Yeah.
Just
pick me
little.
vibes.
Pick me vibes a little bit. Like, why we know Travis Hunter, Heisman winner, phenomenal.
Yeah.
We know Shedeur, phenomenal. What's the rush? Why do you have to be different?
You want to have more more big moments, like more fireworks, more like attention, more.
Everything
it's prime time.
Everything is a showcase,
made for TV event.
Everything is
and let's create some content around it. Let's sell merch around it. Let's have this moment where and it's like, man, I mean, when he gets into the locker room in an NFL team, they're gonna roast his ass over it, and he's gonna handle it because he's a mature guy. He's ready for whatever's going to happen.
Ready for this,
and Shedeur didn't ask for any of this. This is the stuff we were talking about before. He's had to go along with his father's vision. And his father has a big vision. Like, he has big plans for everything. Everything has to be bigger and better. And he has to say, yeah, Dad, like, let's do it. And maybe when coach told him, we're going to retire your jersey. And he's like, what? Why, Dad? Is that right? Like, what about all these guys? Maybe he didn't like it.
Maybe there's a world. Yeah, there's a world where Shedeur
I doubt it was Shedeur's idea. And now he's caught up in this, and it's just more controversy around this young man. And he's got to have that, on his back as he goes to this next step. But like we said before, he's walking away from it. He's walking away from it. So he's going to strike out on his own now. He's going to be like, he's moving to the big city and getting his own apartment. And
here's a thought. I know Shedeur is very confident about the fact that he can change whatever culture he's a part of, but maybe a culture needs to change him a little.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a culture needs to say, we know how great you are. We know what you bring to the table, but we want you. We don't want the extra theatrics.
Yeah.
And some of that will be on a much lower scale because he isn't side by side with his dad, who just naturally that's what gravitates towards Coach Prime, is that swag, that energy, that entertainment factor, the wow factor. That's just part of who Coach Prime is. But there might be teams that are like, no, we don't need you to change us. We're going to change you, actually.
Or just, no, we're not going to go there at all. And a lot of teams who may want a quarterback, who may like his skill set, are going to be a little reluctant because of all this stuff that comes with it. You remember Russell Wilson coming here, kind of similar, like extra stuff.
Sean Payton said, shut it the F down.
Yeah, stop kissing babies. Russell Wilson arrived for day one of training camp in a lifted monster truck, wearing his own throwback jersey, and had a photographer take pictures of him walking from his truck to the building.
Celebrities that call the paparazzi for themselves will never fail to be the most strange and like demented humans on the planet to me. Like you thought we needed to see you that badly that you called these people?
No. They didn't call them. They live with them in their house. So I did the boot camp, the NFL media boot camp.
Yeah.
And it was a couple days in LA, and they take you through TV, analysts, like play-by-play, calling games, radio, podcasts, and all that. And one of the things, we were sitting in this like social media seminar, and they revealed to us that, Russell and Sierra have these, I forget what they call them. Like, they're like freelance, like video capturers who capture stuff for people's social media, living in their home, documenting their lives, like everything they do. And
it's really hard for me because there's so many times I want to defend Russell Wilson, and he just makes it so effing hard to do that.
But you know what? I think he probably learned from that experience a bit.
I'm sure a lot. But what are you thinking about?
What was I thinking about?
Yeah, I'm saying I'm sure he learned a lot, but what specifically were you thinking he learned?
I think he learned that it was a little much. All the extra stuff was a little much, and he probably went to Pittsburgh, and to your point, was in a culture that was more established, where it wasn't like, no, we don't want you to set our culture. We have our culture. You adhere to our culture. You fall in with what we do.
Line.
And Nathaniel Hackett didn't have that. He was like, hey, Russell, come on, man. I love your wife's music. Let's go play skee ball at like whatever. Like
Dave and Buster's.
Yeah, come on, man. But like Sean Payton comes in and goes, no. This is the culture.
Yeah.
This is what it's going to be. And that's why Russell's not here.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a part of his vision.
Absolutely.
So whatever team takes Shedeur has to be comfortable enough with their culture, I think, that they're not looking to a rookie quarterback to change it.
Right.
Necessarily. And if it is,
he shouldn't have to.
And if it's Tennessee or it's Cleveland, then it is looking, and that's, I think, destined for failure. That's setting him up to fail because of everything you're putting on this young man.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL is hard enough as it is for a rookie. The change of pace of the game, the technical acumen of the players, the game plans, the speed of the players, it's all going to ramp up significantly for Shedeur. He's not going to just be sit back there dialing it in like he was, picking dudes apart, having all day to throw. It's going to be a different ball game. And I think he has the skill set for that. He's going to be fine when it comes to on the field, learning the skills he needs to learn. But what's that locker room going to be like? What's his defense going to be like? What's the coaching staff going to be like? Is it going to allow him, like we said, to kind of shrink down within himself, focus on his job, take it one day at a time, and just be the best football player he can be?
I agree. And I think, that's maybe an overall problem in the NFL when it comes to the draft, is in no way, shape, or form should any of these one individual players or few players that you get by drafting them should be responsible for changing your team. You should have other things in place, other things figured out. I think anytime you draft a player expecting that, you're going to be disappointed because it's quite a jump from college to pros. We know that, but also that really isn't their responsibility to completely change a program. You should have a culture that's established to where Shedeur doesn't feel like he has to walk through the doors and change the culture. He knows before he even gets there, he knows that the culture is already there and you just plug him into the system. So I think that's why you saw success around young guys like Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. They didn't have to do everything. There was already a culture established and also a game plan. How do you utilize him? What does it look like? Don't let these young guys call the shots. I mean,
and when you do, it doesn't work. Like Zach Wilson, that didn't work out. Trey Lance, that didn't work. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was the surefire thing. I mean, he's sort of worked out, but even still, he hasn't played great. Caleb Williams wasn't able to do it last year. Justin Fields, not that guy. I mean, every year there are guys who get drafted in the top 5, top 10 quarterbacks who end up failing because of the teams they're on.
Right.
Whereas you look historically, the guys who slide sometimes end up having the best careers. Aaron Rodgers, a classic example of a guy who was supposed to go maybe the top pick of the draft, and he ended up sliding to the late first round, gets drafted by the Green Bay Packers, and has an incredible career, right? Joe Montana wasn't a high draft pick. Tom Brady, of course, slipped to the 6th round. Drew Brees was a 2nd round draft pick. Patrick Mahomes slipped to the 10th pick. Lamar Jackson was the last pick in the 1st round.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best quarterbacks that the game has ever seen have slid in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope Shedeur slides as well to a team that he can just focus on ball.
I agree. Let's talk really quickly about Travis Hunter and kind of what we predict for him. We've been seeing a lot of stuff about the Browns specifically talking about Travis Hunter and making references there. The GM spoke and basically said that they would see Travis Hunter first as a wide receiver and second on defense. They're not going to cap him, but they are very aware that this hasn't really been done in the NFL. So I think they're proceeding with caution. They did make a comparison to Ohtani when talking about Travis Hunter. So do you think, this is a question that I genuinely have for you, do you think Travis Hunter, because there was also an interview where he said if he couldn't play both, he'd rather just not play football?
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Do you think he's doing himself a disservice by sticking to this so heavily and almost alluding to the fact that, like, I either play both or you get none? And I know he wasn't insinuating like, don't play me if you're not going to play me how I want to be played, but it could come off that way.
It did. I mean, that's what I heard, right?
Right. So how do you think he's doing himself a disservice by saying those things, even if he's not being entirely serious?
He's still going to get drafted super high and get his chance.
Of course.
But I do think he's doing himself a little bit of a disservice. I think he's misreading the sort of rigid nature of football coaches in the NFL and the way they think, the way they prepare, the way they game plan, the way they envision their season going. Like, take Sean Payton, for example. He knows once they report, because they've reported now, what they're going to be doing, what everyone's going to be doing every minute of every day until the season is over on Super Bowl Sunday. That is on an itinerary. So every position is with their position group for X amount of hours for every day to go over this game plan that we put in, or this piece of tape, or this piece of this, or this piece of that. And so when Travis says, I'm going to play both ways, or I'm not playing at all, he's forcing those coaches to change their model.
Yeah.
And that is hard for them to fathom, that I'm going to have to do things differently for this one guy.
Yeah.
So how does that change what I do? Because we've talked about the meeting time, the film study that you do with just your position group, the hours you spend every day in those meeting rooms going over very detailed, tiny little stuff that you want everybody in that room to understand.
Yeah.
And if you have a guy playing both positions, well, where do you split up the time?
Right.
Which room is more important? And what are you missing when you're not in the other room? Will what you're missing when you're not there end up costing you a game? Or are you just so good that the benefits are going to outweigh the drawbacks, and you're going to win more games than you're going to lose because you're going to be playing both sides and doing it like it's never been done before? But I think that, like, forcing the hand of NFL coaches is it never really works out, because those are the guys who decide whether you're on the field or not, and whether to throw you the ball or not, or how things are going to go for you. There's so much out of your control as an athlete, especially football player. And you have to get put on the field. And if you're demanding that you're on the field, that could scare some coaches.
And to be honest with you, I really hope he did not mean it to sound so entitled, but it did come off that way, in my opinion. It did come off like, this is what I want, so I hope I get what I want. And it's like, that's the
a
only
little bit of the
thing,
princess treatment you're talking about.
And that's
that he got
where
over there.
I feel like there's gonna have to be some backtracking a little bit on undoing. I don't want to call it damage. I'm going to call it damage just for the sake of, like, making the reference, but there's going to have to be a little bit of, like, undoing the Coach Prime effect.
Oh yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, I think because Travis had such a great relationship with Shedeur and with Coach Prime, and probably had a little bit more say than he otherwise would at another school or in the NFL, certainly. There's going to have to be a little bit of, like, they're going to have to relearn some things, because it's not going to be things aren't going to be handled the same way that they were under Coach Prime. I would say things in the NFL are not typically handled the same way that they are on the college level, but certainly not under Coach Prime. That's very different. They're in a league of their own. Clearly, they're getting their jerseys retired and they still attend the school. So there's a lot of things that they do differently over there, which is fine. Coach Prime has the right to run it however he wants to run it. But I do think Travis Hunter and Shedeur both are going to have to unlearn some of that they got very used to, because I'm sure they did love it. I'm sure they did love the attention and the extra flashiness and all the excitement. And I mean, you had a rapper running out of the tunnel with you at a football game. You don't see that. That's not very common. So some of this they're going to have to get unfamiliar with, because it's really not familiar in the NFL.
It's not.
And I don't think it ever will be.
It's not. And Travis was, I think, the #1 cornerback recruit coming out of high school, and he chose to go to Jackson State to play with Coach Prime. So he did play against inferior talent. It's not like they're not talented football players at that level, but he did play against guys that he was better than. And same was the case last year with CU, because he's better than everybody. I mean, he won the Heisman Trophy, not taking anything away from him. But you're about to go play at the highest level in the world.
Right.
Those guys are going to be a lot better. So let's see where your skill set is versus those guys before we create a plan for you. And Coach Prime is a master motivator.
Yeah.
He'll convince you that you can do things that you never believed you could do.
Which is awesome.
It is.
But
and then you start to believe it,
delusion.
right? And I think Travis's thinking here about playing both ways no matter what comes from Coach Prime saying you can do it, you should do it, because he's echoing that. He's saying that, he has to do that.
That's a good point.
He has to do that. He's done it. Ever since I've seen him do it, he's been doing it. Any GM and coach would be crazy not to do it with him there. He needs to do it at the next level. Of course, he's telling Travis that, and Travis is echoing Coach Prime's rhetoric, which got him to this point in the first place. So why would you not do that? It got him the Heisman Trophy. It got him the highest trophy in the land for a college football player. So, of course, you're going to believe that is the way forward. But I think he's going to butt up against some very stubborn NFL coaches. That said, probably whoever drafts him is not quite as stubborn. It has a plan to at least tell him what he wants to hear at first, but let's go see how you manage this and this and this before we just throw you out there every play to start the game. You know what I mean?
It sounds like the Browns are already talking about Hunter like that's their plan.
Yeah.
And they already know this is what we're going to do. We also know that he wants to do this, but they're already kind of talking about it, in my opinion, with a tone that alludes to the fact that if the Browns do get Hunter, they're prepared. They already know how they're going to address him, what they're going to tell him, what the plan is in terms of using him and how you use him and all of that. It's just going to require Travis Hunter. You're going to have to be okay with whatever they decide.
Yeah.
If they want you in one position.
Yeah, you're part of a football team. You got to just say yes, sir. Yes, coach.
Correct.
And this world of NIL and entitlement, and these kids these days, they don't know the value of hard and all that. I mean, obviously he's worked very hard to get to where he is, but there's more of a sense of empowerment for the individual in the system now, who can speak up and like demand this and demand that. You remember Caleb Williams last year negotiating his contract, wanted a piece of the ownership. He wanted a piece of the Bears. He wanted to own part of the Bears. I don't think he ended up getting that, but he had some really weird, quirky things in his contract that were basically, look how great I am, I deserve more. And that's not how football should work. In the locker room, we're all the same.
And clearly it doesn't work that way, because he didn't have that great of a season.
He didn't. It's cautionary tale. The same Russell Wilson thing, coming in here in the monster truck, didn't go so well, right? So it's going to be, and there's a world in which, like, the Browns, because the Browns do need a quarterback, probably. Maybe if Shedeur gets drafted #1 overall by Tennessee, maybe they like Cam Ward and they didn't think he was going to be there. Mm-hmm. So then they choose him. So then do the Giants take Travis? You don't know. Or maybe they want to, but they don't want to play him both ways. They don't want him to quit football, and they take that seriously. So there's a lot, up in the air here. And, you don't know what's going to happen here, but no doubt about it, he's one of the best football players we've ever seen, one of the most versatile. No one's ever done what he's done. The question is, how will the NFL, full of stubborn coaches, use him to his strengths? And it's going to be fascinating to watch.
It will. Looks like we've got our friend Brandon Cristal joining us live from actually Ball Arena. So
Baller.
he's switching things up a little bit. He's at the basketball arena, but we're gonna have him hop on and shed some light on all of our conversations that we've had so far. So I don't know if he's ready to go, but I do see him. I do know he's there. He's ready.
He's giving us a thumbs up.
Yeah, he is. All right, there he is.
Wow,
Hello,
right by
BK.
the stairwell. Look at you, man.
Yeah, well, I had to come up to the hockey press box because they're not set for Nuggets yet, or hockey ice, because there's a big concert here tonight. Some huge Latino artist is going to crush it, I'm sure. And so they're loading in for that concert right now. I'm not even sure who the artist is, so I'd have to double check.
BK, did you hear us talking about Shedeur and Travis? And did you hear Coach Prime's comments about Shedeur Sanders and the jersey retiring?
Yeah, I was there. So I just raced from there to here, and I kind of he got that question third out of the gate. You know, a couple daily CU media threw some CU spring game kind of questions at him. Then Pat Graham from the Associated Press asked him about the controversy. He didn't even really let Pat finish his question and said that this is all just about Shedeur, right? And all of that. And he's like, we know about Travis. He's like, if his name wasn't Sanders, you know, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. It's like, well, if his name wasn't Sanders, you're probably not retiring your quarterback's jersey,
Correct.
even though they
He
had
said
a
the same
really
thing.
good. And so he was quick to say that I can't worry about what happened before me. You know, I'm in charge of what's happening now. So then a couple more football, you know, current team questions. Then I got to ask my question. I said, have there been any conversations with Rick George? Because this falls on Rick as much as anyone, and the previous athletic directors that were here, you know, Mike Bone and the like before Rick got here, in not honoring the past. And so you can't put that all on Coach Prime. And really, Rick should have been made available today. Hopefully he'll talk on Saturday, because I understand, look, Travis is the most decorated player in the history of college football in a single season, as Prime pointed out. But why wouldn't you maybe add some more names to that list? And why haven't you done more in recent years? Why isn't there a Coach Bill McCartney statue? And so I didn't love Deion's answers about, hey, I'm just worried about right now. Because even then he could have said, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm friends with Cordell and Westbrook. Well, he could be, and he's like, and all those great corners, but he didn't even list Deion Figures or anyone. He certainly didn't list Alfred Williams, who's in the College Football Hall of Fame, and Darian Hagan and how great he was, and Eric Bieniemy, guys like that easily could have their jerseys retired as well. Some other butt kiss winners, not just Big Al, but Matt Russell, guys like that. And so I think that he kind of skirted around it. I'm not gonna beat him up too much on it, because I don't think this was his idea necessarily. I don't think he pushed back on it.
How is it not his idea?
Yeah, whose idea was it, do you think?
I don't know, but I don't know if he went to Rick and said, hey, we need to retire Travis and Shedeur's number. Because when he said Travis and Shedeur aren't even worried, he said Shedeur doesn't care about this. He's trying to figure out where he's getting drafted. Literally, as I arrived, the Giants were leaving. I saw Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. They were getting off the elevator as I was getting on it to go from the parking garage to the field, and then was able to talk to another Giants personnel exec that was there about the workout. And they said it went great. I do believe that, look, Shedeur was already going to be there. You could just have him wave to the crowd, and that would still be fine, and just retire Travis's number and be totally fine with it.
Exactly.
The reason I'm saying I'm not beating Deion up on it, I didn't love his answer, because he easily could have said, yeah, we need to do a better job of honoring the tradition. They've had one guy's jersey retired in 50 years, and it was Rashaan Salam, understandably. You win the Heisman, you get your jersey retired. Great. But the players that we just touched on, guys like Big Al, guys like Darian Hagan and Eric Bieniemy, easily could also have their number retired. And you still have plenty of numbers for players to wear when you can wear 0 to 100 and you can double up on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I don't think Shedeur cares at all, or asks for it, or wants it at all. He's, like you said, he's getting ready for the NFL draft. What about Travis? Because there's a story came out, and you know, we were all sending it in a text message thread today between us about Travis basically saying, look, if I'm not playing both ways, I'm not playing football at all. Obviously, probably a little tongue in cheek, but do you think that rubs GMs and coaches the wrong way? As we were discussing before you hopped on, I'm sure you heard my points, that these old coaches, it's hard to teach them new tricks, and when you're kind of pushing that on them, is it going to push any of them away?
It might, but I think it depends on where he's going to go. And Andrew Berry, if they end up taking him with the number 2 pick at Cleveland, he's a younger GM. He's been in football forever. His dad worked in football. His twin brother is also in a personnel department with another team. And so he's a younger guy. Kevin Stefanski grew up in pro sports, but with his dad as the president of the Sixers. And so he's in his late 40s or whatever it may be. I'm just saying it's not Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, either of the Harbaughs. If he goes somewhere where there is a younger coach, I think that, and certainly a young, a coach that has a younger player's mentality, or and some of those older guys are great player coaches, but they still have a very set way of doing things. We know Sean Payton does, we knew Pete Carroll does, but their players love playing for him. We could ask Shelby Harris about playing for Pete Carroll, and he'll tell you how much he loved it. But now he plays for Stefanski. I think that that's a kid being confident and saying, "Look, I'm different than anyone's ever come along," because he truly is, and I want a chance to show that in the NFL. Because it doesn't do them any good to say, nope, he's only going to play this. You can tinker and toy with it all you want. And then when you get to game day, you can say, oh, we only have one package on this side of the ball, or we're not ready to use you there yet. Or there's two guys that are really good at corner, and we're not just going to throw you out there to throw you out there because we need you to be our star receiver right now, or vice versa. But I think it'd be silly for a team to say, no, he's only one thing, because part of the novelty of drafting him is all the stuff you can do with him on both sides of the ball. I don't have a problem with him saying it, just like I don't have a problem with Ashton Genty sending an open letter through the Players Tribune to all 32 GMs and teams telling them to draft him because he's the best running back and he's going to do what Saquon Barkley did for the Eagles.
Is that what he did?
Yeah, he did that yesterday.
But nowhere in his little letter did he and I think Travis Hunter was probably joking quite a bit when he said that, but nowhere did I get the impression that Ashton Genty's undertone was, give me what I want or I'm going to be upset.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how Travis's comes off. I understand that there's confidence involved there. Yes. But to say both or all or nothing is basically what Travis is alluding to. I want all, which is his preference, or nothing. And I'm sure there's a joke there, but it can be perceived a little bit as entitlement and ego over confidence. And I think that's where the line gets a little thin. So you have to be very, very careful.
And that's where it's tricky to we don't know as much about Travis other than if you watch his Twitch streams, but he only talked to the media once or twice kind of all year. And we know he's got a big smile and a big personality, but kind of does the things he wants to do and isn't out there as much as clearly Shedeur is. But you look at the way teams have been trying to understand who Shedeur is, and Kaylin Kaler wrote a great piece that came out yesterday on ESPN.com, and she was here at the pro day and trying to get a sense of who he is and really what is he about and all of that. And that's why, in addition to meeting with the Giants again today, when the Raiders were looking at him this week, and I think he was there, if he wasn't there, he's going there, whatever it may be. Tom Brady's known him outside of who he is now. Tom Brady's known him for a while. And so Tom Brady will have a better sense of kind of what makes Shedeur tick. How much does Shedeur pick Tom Brady's brain in the last couple of years? Tom will have that idea and can relay that to John Spytek and Pete Carroll if it turns out that the Raiders really like him, if he were to still be there at 6. But trying to figure out who he is. With Travis, I think you're looking at it and saying, this kid that wants to play both ways because he is different than everyone we've seen. But again, I think it'd be silly for a team to draft him and at the post-draft press conference say, yep, he's only this or he's only that. And I don't think a team is drafting him to use him like that. I think come September and even through the spring and summer, as he's trying to figure out meeting schedule and practice schedule, is it sustainable to work on both sides of the ball? That's something Nate's touched on a lot, that you have to be in those meetings. And even if you're going to make special concessions and have the vets stay there with them, and obviously the position coaches, it's still not going to be 100% at both. You just can't do it unless you totally change where offense meets in the morning and defense meets in the afternoon. And we know that's not really how it works because they overlap.
All right, let's shift gears to the Broncos and their 20th pick. A lot of conjecture that a running back is maybe their target for the first round. Ashton Genty talked about how he's talked with the Broncos and he's excited about that. What's the sense you're getting on the running back situation for the Broncos and who they might target?
Well, it's funny because the things the Broncos need, they're lucky. Just like last year, you had 6 quarterbacks. They picked one that obviously worked for what Sean Payton wants to do. Will Bo Nix go down as the best of the 6 in 15, 20 years? Who knows? But he certainly had as good a first year as anyone. Obviously, with what Jane Daniels did in D.C., he's right there as well. But those two had the best rookie years, even though the other ones showed signs or whatever it may be. And so they hit there. And now they need a running back and they need more tight end depth. And that's arguably the 2 deepest positions. There are a lot of edge rushers. Like, it won't surprise me if we see that number of 26 edge rushers taken in a draft challenged, but they aren't all premium edge rushers. There's Abdul Carter, there's the guys from Georgia, but there's only 4 or 5 that are like, come in right away and will play. A lot of them are, for lack of a better description, kind of Jonathan Cooper types, where you want them out there. They're going to make plays, but they're not leading the league in sacks like Nick Bonito was flirting with. There aren't that many of those guys. But when you talk about running back and tight end specifically, because there's so many of them, they don't have to take either position at 20. I will be shocked if there's not a running back drafted by the end of Friday, which is day 2, rounds 2 and 3. But I don't know if at 20, even though every mock draft has Omarion Hampton and he fits the bill across the board in his ability to catch, his size at 6 foot and right around 210, 215. So he's a little bigger than some of the other backs, but he's catching the ball really well, can pass pro, had 2,000 all-purpose yards, 15 rushing TDs. The only time we've seen Sean Payton take a running back in the first round, both guys had Heismans. And Reggie Bush, which you just talked about, not expecting a guy to be there. They didn't think Reggie Bush would get past 1 to the Texans, but Mario Williams was that pick, and they were shocked, so they took Reggie Bush. And then fast forward to 2011, later in the round, in the 20s, they took another Heisman winner in Mark Ingram. So you've got a Heisman winner. Otherwise, they love finding Alvin Kamara in the third round and guys like that. Thus, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, the 2 Ohio State kids. Maybe it's a little later and it's the Tootin kid, although he's a little smaller but really fast, from Virginia Tech, or Jordan James from Oregon, not the biggest either. But there's so many good running backs. Dylan Sampson's rated really high out of Tennessee, but he's on the smaller side. You've already got a small, quick running back. So they can go a bunch of different directions. You could look at Scadaboo in the later rounds. Yeah. He's not going to be an every down back, but when you hand him the ball, if you need those 2 yards, he'll get you the 2 yards. And so I think that this is a good year for them to be in the running back market and certainly the tight end market as well.
To your point about, not taking a swing on like the number 1 running back out there, like for a guy who had to run it on his play sheet, do you really want to trade up and get the number 1 running back in the draft? Are you going to use him the way they use Saquon Barkley? He wants to be a Saquon Barkley type of guy. And when I look at the moves the Broncos are making, getting their joker in Evan Ingram, like shoring up all these other weapons for Sean Payton to get cute and come up with packages and throw the ball. Do you really want a guy who wants the ball every play at running back? Does that make sense for this offense?
I think if you had Saquon Barkley, you would cater the offense to him. But I look at the 2 Ohio State kids in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, and we know that they visited with both of them recently in town. I don't think they're being shy about it. They told us they're taking a running back, or that they will take a running back because of how deep this draft is. Both Sean and George said that, and their Zoom press conference is going to start here in 7 minutes to talk about the draft, and running back's is going to come up a lot. I just don't know if at 20, if it's not Genty, if Hampton really is worth that first round pick, because when you see those 2 Ohio State kids who are both good size, Henderson's maybe a little quicker, a little smaller, but he's a 1,000-yard rusher, can catch the ball really well, can find the end zone, had 15 total touchdowns, 10 on the ground. And then same with Judkins, who's a little bigger, closer, he's 221 pounds, 6 feet. But you could get either of those guys with your pick in the second round, or you could trade up a couple spots to ensure that you got the one you wanted in the second round. There are some people, like I heard Daniel Jeremiah say, he has Omarion Hampton 13th on his board. Well, that's great, but that doesn't mean that you want to use that value there. Maybe there's a DB you like, or realistically, and going back to what you're talking about with where the Browns and Giants might operate, there's a scenario where they get the guy they want, whether in this case it's Travis Hunter, we think with Cleveland, and at 3, the Giants do take Abdul Carter, but then they're calling the Broncos might be the first team they call to jump back in if Shedeur slides past 6, 7, 9 and is there at 20. They may have to go a little higher to hold off the Steelers, because the Steelers aren't opposed to trading up. They did it with the Broncos just a few years ago, where they went from 20 to 10 in 2018 to go get Devin Bush. The Broncos got Noah Fant. Then in the second round, they got Drew Lock and why am I drawing a blank on our friend, the lineman from K-State? That started all 4 years. Yeah, Dalton Reisner. They got Dalton Reisner and Drew back to back. But in that draft, the Steelers jumped from 20 to 10, and the Broncos dropped back to 20. I'm just saying the Steelers aren't opposed with Mike Tomlin to go up if they love Shedeur. They're worried somebody else might get him. I'm just saying at 20, the Broncos could go a million directions, and I was settling, but selecting a running back when there's a bunch available and knowing how Sean likes value, I have a hard time penciling in running back right now at 20, unless it were Ashton Genty, or even trading to somehow he slides past the Cowboys at 12, trading up to 13 or 14, because we know Sean will do that and give up next year's pick if he really loves a player.
Fascinating stuff. It's a week away now, BK, and we'll be checking in with you pretty much every day. A lot next week. And, Daniel Jeremiah's big board is cool and all, but I want to see yours, BK. I want to see your big board, or at least a mock draft. Are you going to put something together for us?
Yeah, I've got a mock draft coming, and then I'll unveil my big board after the draft, and it's going to be extremely accurate. I can guarantee you that. But no, I'll have a mock draft that we'll have out on GorillaSports.net. You had a good piece on Shedeur today, and I'm going to follow your lead, but put that out there. I'm aiming for Tuesday, Wednesday is my goal, as I'm trying to gather all the information.
Well, you're a busy man, so get back out there and keep doing your thing, BK. We appreciate it. Good stuff, man.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Later.
Really quick, before we wrap things up, I want to ask you, our producer, Andy, shout out to Andy. She's right over here.
Shout out, Andy.
Kind of alluded to the fact that because we heard from Genty, he did an interview that was posted everywhere where he talked about the fact that the Broncos were really on him.
Yeah.
But then we saw a tweet that said that the Broncos hosted 5 running backs on top 30 visits this offseason.
Yeah.
Genty was not one of those. And Andy sent in our group text and said, Genty getting the Bo Nix treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think there's because you did talk about how he does like to play mind games. So
it wasn't just Bo Nix. They did that with Pastor Tan as well.
So do you think some of that is going on here with Genty?
I think if they could get him, they'll get him. They would like to have him here. Of course, he's, runner up on the Heisman, did incredible things as a running back. We saw him with his shirt off, incredibly strong young man, and he's going to be able to hopefully be that RB1 for years, or at least, a good 7 or 8 years would be great for a running back who's going to have a lot of carries and a lot of opportunities. My question just continues to be, will Sean Payton want a guy who does best if you give him 25 carries a game? Is he going to be right for this offense?
Are you going to utilize him the way he
right?
needs
Sean
to
Payton had to run it on his play sheet. These are professional running backs back there. You have them on your team. You clearly think they're good enough to be on your roster. You put them in your backfield. You hand them the freaking ball in the game when you need to run the football, and he couldn't do that.
Yep.
He had to run it to remind himself to do it. Are you going to have to do that with Ashton Genty? Is that going to be enough for you to run the ball? Or are you going to, because now they got Evan Ingram, they're going to want to throw in the ball. They're probably going to get another receiver. They're probably going to draft a tight end too they like. So is there enough to go around to justify trading up to get Ashton Genty? Are you moving mountains to draft a guy you're not going to use enough? That's what I want to know. But you're absolutely right about the silent treatment. He's like Sean Payton walks into a bar, he sees a girl in the corner he really likes, and he won't look at her. He won't look at her. He won't look at her until he's got the perfect line, and he saddles up and he's bam, and then he gives it. But they did that with Pastor Tan, and that was actually before Sean Payton was around. This is a George Payton thing. George Payton knew he wanted to draft Pastor Tan from the jump. Never looked at him, never sent anybody to scout him, never called him, didn't do any interviews because he knew him, and he knew he wanted him. They did the same thing with Bo last year. Obviously, they had a private workout in Oregon with him, but after that, they knew he was their guy, and it was like, don't even look over there. Smoke and mirrors. They had Peyton Manning coming on the radio to talk about how they really like J.J. McCarthy, and they might be making – this was the day before the draft. Peyton Manning was on the radio talking about how they love J.J. McCarthy, trying to throw off the scent. So there are some mind games happening here. And I know Peyton was probably involved with that, Peyton and Peyton, the Peyton triangle here.
Yeah.
It's a very,
so there might be some mind games right now with Genty.
Yes.
Because he said the Broncos, he kind of alluded to the fact that the Broncos couldn't leave him alone.
Yeah.
But then you see the Broncos hosting running backs, and Genty's not one of them.
No, actually, Genty, no, we're not interested.
Yeah. I think Sean Payton, he's up to no good, but hopefully a lot of good at the same time.
Yeah, no, he knows what he's doing.
He does.
In Sean, we trust.
Yeah.
He's proven in 2 short years.
I've taken ownership. I was hard on him.
Yeah.
I needed to be a little bit more patient. I think most Broncos fans' patience was wearing very, very thin.
Understandably.
And I needed to just trust the process. He's a great coach. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people disagreed with Bo Nix last year, being a Denver Bronco, and that ended up being
so far so good there.
Decision.
Yeah.
So you got to trust the guy that's getting paid to do his job,
Yeah.
Do his job.
Yeah. A lot of money too.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, this has been, we have to give a little bit of love to Accurate America.
That's right.
Our new sponsor here on this show, because they are trying to keep people covered.
Yeah.
Literally, no. You never know when hail is going to hit, especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
I, for one, am trying to figure out a wedding date, and I was like,
Oh.
April could be fun. Oh, wait, we could get hail, we could get snow, we could get a tornado. Who knows? So the last thing you want to do is be caught scrambling, trying to figure out how to fix your roof when the weather comes, because it will. It's inevitable. So make your call before the storm. Call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF. They'll partner with you on navigating with your insurance. They'll provide quick, professional, and knowledgeable service using the latest technology and 3D modeling. Shout out 3D.
Hey.
It's kind of crazy, actually, how technology is taking over, but we love it and
Yes,
we
we do.
appreciate it. Their work is guaranteed as long as you own your home. So like I said, don't scramble at the last minute. Call Accurate America at 303-900-ROOF before the storm. Accurate America, experts in roofing and exteriors. Shout out to our friends over at Accurate America. And for sponsoring this show, this is presented by Accurate America, another Guerrilla Sports Off-Field. I'm Liv Moots, that's Nate Jackson. And we'll see you guys next week for all things NFL Draft.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! See ya.
Bye.